Can we have a show of hands, please? Who is in Rwanda for the first time?
Whoa. Oh, wow.
Wow, okay. A lot of people, okay. How do you say it? Murakoze.
Murakoze.
How do you say welcome?
Murakaza Neza.
Murakaza Neza, yes. Murakaza Neza, which means welcome to Rwanda. Can we have a mic around? I'd just like to get a couple of quick impressions. Again, no long speeches. Just like maybe one word that captures your initial impressions. No speeches, please. Just a word.
Efficiency at immigration. That's 3 words I know.
Efficiency at immigration. Okay, any couple of the words?
Yes, sir.
Very clean roads.
Very clean words, okay.
Orderliness.
Orderliness, okay. Any other quick words?
Very safe.
Sorry? Very safe.
Safe.
Okay. Eleni. Eleni, is your first time in Rwanda?
Discipline.
Discipline, okay. Yeah, you can still speak.
Determination.
Determination, all right. So you got a sense of what captures the first impressions of many people who come into this country. I'll talk about my first impression. You know, when I first came to Rwanda, it was actually for the first, it was an ALN event that brought us here in 2013, right? Was it 2014? And I hadn't been to Rwanda before, and I was also very impressed, many of the same impressions that you've had, and then after that, we began engaging more here in the country with the government to see what we could do together. And what we found here was a government that was highly organized, was serious about the economic development. They have an investment promotion agency called the Rwanda Development Board, which Michaela is part of, and Belize used to work there as well. And it actually functions to remove roadblocks. You know, typically in most parts of the continent, governments are creating roadblocks. Here they're actually removing the roadblocks for you to actually do things. Never been asked for a bribe, not even from the lowest, person in the public sector ranks, right? Not a customs official or a policeman or no one at the airport, nothing. And I've been coming here for the last almost 10 years now, in and out, and this has kind of been my experience. And there was one story that always stands. I always say that the Rwandan government is the most efficient government in the world, not even in Africa. I remember when I first, we had started the African Leadership University here, and initially we were in a building across the road, Kigali Heights. We had rented a floor there. And Acha and I were in town, and we were invited. We heard, the president, I guess, heard that we were around, and he asked us to come and see him. So we went to meet him, and then he says, so how are things going? I said, oh yeah, things are going fine. He says, do you need any help? And we said, wow, okay. President asking us if we need help, okay. Then we said, yeah, sure, we want to fast track some new programs. Can you help us with accreditation? I said, okay, sure. And then we asked for something else. And then he says, would you like some land? I said, yeah, sure, we'll take some land. And then he says, how much land would you like? And I said, 50 acres. So then he laughs and he says, okay, we'll give you 20 acres. So then I leave, I'm like, government, he's just talking, we'll never get this land. I didn't understand much about this country at the time. I go back home and I have it on my to-do list, follow up about this land. And I was like, yeah, I'll check in 3 months' time because this is just government. Then the following, 4 days later, I get a text from someone saying, congratulations. I said, what do you mean? They show me the picture on the WhatsApp of the cabinet minutes from that day. 20 acres of land have been allocated to ALU. 3 days. I then came and a month later, I went to the land registry. My title deeds were ready, done. And that is how this country works. Is there any government, even the US or Germany, that can be that efficient, right? So the conversation that we want to have with, we thought that we would just bring a few folks who can share a bit of insight into how does this work? How does Rwanda, really make all this, magic happen? You heard about Jeremy talked about 7% growth consistently for the last 20 years. So I'll start with you, Michaela. Your title is the CTO of Rwanda. Now, when most people hear the word CTO, they think Chief Technology Officer.
Yes.
All right? Can you explain what is a CTO and for the country and what exactly do you do?
Yes, thank you, Fred. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Michaela. I'm the Chief Tourism Officer. And that means that within the structure of the Rwandan government, I oversee the tourism sector and all the verticals associated to that. We have a special setup in Rwanda. Very often we do have to explain what is the CTO and where it sits, because we do not have a traditional Ministry of Tourism. Tourism sits within the Rwanda Development Board, which has investment, tourism, skills, and the one-stop center that facilitates business registration and other things. Why? Because tourism is one of the most important sectors in our economy. It is 10% of our GDP. It is our first earner of foreign exchange, and it is a sector that the government takes seriously. So that's why it sits there. Now, under tourism, you have marketing the destination, developing new products, conservation, management of the national parks. We do have 4 national parks, tourism regulation, hospitality quality control, and of course, the different partnerships that you see, Arsenal, PSG, BAL, and recently FC Bayern Munich. Yeah.
Okay, can we just pause on that minute?
Yeah.
You mentioned these just casually, these partnerships with Arsenal, PSG, whatever. Let's pause there for a minute. These guys sponsored a European soccer team, right? A Premier League team, Arsenal. Why? And remember, you caused a lot of shockwaves in the world. An small African country sponsoring a soccer team in the UK, right? Then you did it with PSG, you did Arsenal, you did PSG, and then I think Bayern Munich, right? UK, France, Germany. Why did what is the logic behind that? And and then can you talk a bit about some of the benefits that have accrued to Rwanda from you making that bet?
Thanks. I think Belize will be able to talk more about the shock part, because she was in office when that happened. I kind of take on when it was settled, the dust had settled. But the reason why government of Rwanda first decided to invest in sport generally, before even going to the partnership, it's because sport is a unifier, and I think our president talked about it really well during the panel during the Qatar Business Forum panel. Sport is a unifier. We are in a period of the development of our country where we are consolidating the fabric of our society, and sports plays a very important role there. Many of you may not know that, but the very first event that took place in Rwanda just after the outskirts of 1994, just after July 1994, where people came together, was a football match after the end of the genocide. And so fast forward to our time now, we partner with Premier League team to represent our country, because sports also give access. With those teams, we're able to access masses, visit Rwanda. Rwanda is open. All the key messages that we want to pass are live during those football matches. And we also work with the players, or the first team players, to come and visit the country, to develop content, and for them to also share our story through their eye. And it's a way for us to be as open as we want to be today. Yeah. But it's also very relevant in terms of revenues. So between 2018 and now, we've gotten $500 million in terms of media value. And so that's not something that you can, it works actually in numbers. We've seen more and more visitors coming from Europe. The UK is our second destination. The US is our first in terms of origin of tourists. But the numbers of tourists coming from the UK has increased. I'm sure Yvonne can talk about that since we have a direct flight London, Kigali, and now we have a direct flight Paris, Kigali, and so all that works in concert to make sure that our destination is competitive globally.
So now people are watching these games, they can see Visit Rwanda on the shirts, and it's really, so you're talking about, you saw this as a unifying force for the country, and it's part of your story, and so taking that and selling that to the world and attracting people. Belize, you today run the African Wildlife Foundation here in Rwanda. But before that, you were working in RDB and you were the CTO, is that correct, before? So can you talk about two things, please? Why, when you were there, when this deal was done, what is the thinking behind it? And what are some of the reactions that you got from the world when you decided to do that? And then secondly, now in your new role with AWF, why does conservation play such a key role in Rwanda's story?
Thank you. Yes, I was the CTO when we signed a deal with Arsenal, and essentially a lot of people do ask me why we made that move, and I'll say it's very simple. It's about nation branding. What we realized that as much as we were pushing through with tourism projects, going into fairs, launching Rwandair, we still had to face an issue with what the world, especially our key markets like the US and the UK, had, the perception they had of Rwanda. It was essentially about two things. If it was not about guerrillas, it was about the genocide. And we sat down and say, okay, this has to stop. We need to do something. We need to own the narrative. We need to be able to push the narrative, the true narrative about Rwanda. We need to showcase what Rwanda is about to the world. One way we actually did that is to think about what is that unifier aspect that the entire world come to see and to share. One of them, there were actually three things. There was sports, music, and food. I think if we can all agree that those three things will unify us, me and you will have a beef, but when you see food, we'll sit, eat, put our beef on the side, and then come back to it after. Same thing with music, same thing with sports. Double click on the sport. One of the mainstream sports that we all know, it's football and soccer. Again, double click on that. We ended up, coming up with doing deals with football leagues. The first one was Arsenal, and the rest is history. Of course, the expectation is that a small poor African country cannot do this. And the answer was, why not? We have tourism revenues, and we have the right to use the tourism revenues and invest it in the way we want as a country. And that's the stand we took. We stood by that brand, and we're still sticking to that brand. We move on to signing a deal with Paris Saint-Germain, and now with FC Bayern de Munich. So that's what I could say about this Arsenal deal and the Visit Rwanda deal. And again, how Rwanda functions is we really think about tourism in a holistic way. Michaela mentioned one of the application aspect of tourism. One of the biggest, one of the most important to me, and I think I will say as well about the government of Rwanda, is conservation. So tourism here in Rwanda, essentially we're a nature-based ecotourism destination. Yes. And we can only do it if we are prioritizing conservation, wildlife conservation. I did mention about the mountain gorillas, which is our flagship product. And without the protection of these mountain gorillas, honestly, we will not have that carrot that will attract tourists. So what we're essentially doing at AWF, I moved from RDB in 2021, and I think it's probably one of the best moves because I have the hat of the Rwanda director for AWF, but I also do understand the objectives and the priorities of the government of Rwanda when it comes to tourism and conservation. So I love the fact that I can bridge the two priorities. And one of the biggest priority now that the government of Rwanda has embarked on in 2018 is the restoration of the Volcanoes National Park. And the Volcanoes National Park is the habitat of the mountain gorillas. And interestingly enough, this project was born from the success of conservation, the success of wildlife conservation, mountain gorillas conservation. In 2017, we received the statistics that we have 27% increase in the number of mountain gorillas in the Volcanoes National Park. The issue there, clap, but we didn't clap. I remember I was sitting in my office with my former colleagues in conservation. I was extremely happy. I said, yes, now I have my narrative, I'll go to the media and talk about this. It's amazing. And of course, conservationists being conservationists, they're like, perhaps you should hold your horses there. We have a problem. The mountain gorillas are increasing in number, but the habitat is not increasing. We are having issues with, infants, baby gorillas actually dying. We have silverback fighting for space. So if we do not look at this carefully in the next 20, 30 years, we'll be dealing with another problem. So the government of Rwanda now embarked in these projects to expand the Volcanoes National Park, which has an impact on the community, has a positive impact on the community, and a positive impact on the economy. I'll speak a little bit more about it if on one-on-one, but that's essentially what we're doing right now as AWF in Rwanda.
And can you talk a bit about how you give communities a stake in conservation? Because that's something that's also quite unique. One of the things, we do quite a bit of work as well in conservation at ALU. We have the ALU School of Conservation, and when you study conservation around the continent, you find if communities are not given a stake and they don't feel ownership of the wildlife, then they won't look after it, right? And then that's when poaching happens and things like that. But what do you do in Rwanda to give communities a stake in conservation?
I think one of my favorite initiatives of the Rwanda government when it comes to community engagement is the revenue sharing program. And this revenue sharing program that as 10% of the tourism revenues goes back into the communities. And the community does manage the 10%. So for all the 4 national parks, 10% of the revenues goes back into the communities. So that was, since 2005, there have been almost 1,000 projects that have been supported by this revenue sharing program. So that alone made the community in the surroundings of all these national parks own, the narrative of conservation. They feel connected to the wildlife, and they do protect the wildlife. So that is the number one, I think to me, that's one way that the Rwanda government has actually managed to engage the community. And specifically for these expansion projects, since 2018, the Rwanda government, supported by organizations like AWF, has engaged the community. We've had almost 10, 20 community engagement, making them understand the benefit of this restoration initiative, making understand that they will benefit socially and economically, but also engaging with them to understand what kind of livelihood option would you want to go to now. We know that agriculture is actually one of the bases in terms of livelihood in that area. With the expansion, of course, it's going to affect the agriculture. But again, in Rwanda, what we do is we look at a problem and find solutions. Of course, we get we're taking away the land from farmers. Yes, we are. But we actually
Green Village.
yes, she's reminding me that we're also going to create smart green villages for them. That's the social part. And these smart green villages are integrated villages. We have schools, healthcare facilities for the communities instead of where they're currently living now. So all of this is to say that the community, everything the government of Rwanda does, whether it's conservation or it's tourism or any other project, it has the community at the core. So maybe that's what I could talk about in terms of community engagement.
So really giving communities a stake, giving them a share, a say in how conservation is done, and with that you get the support, and you're seeing the number of, the actual wildlife assets actually increasing, not shrinking like in other parts of Africa. Mika, do you want to comment to that?
Just a few points to add. A lot of the rangers that now work in our national park are former poachers. That's also, part of the transformation of the community, and making them, not only understand that it's relevant for them, but also making them change their approach, and they become conservationists themselves. And in addition to the 10% that goes back to build schools, hospitals, and so on, we have a 5% compensation fund that goes into compensating communities for wildlife damages. So if a buffalo damages your field, etc., and you manage conflicts, with the local community in case such things happen. And then 1% goes to purchase the health insurance, mutuelle de santé, because we have a universal health insurance scheme in Rwanda, but some people cannot afford that, and the 1% goes into that contribution.
Okay,
as well.
so conservation is literally paying for people's health,
Yes.
in these communities. That's fantastic. Now, turning to you, Yvonne, Michaela cannot do her work as a chief tourism officer, in attracting visitors, physically bringing them to Rwanda, and Belize cannot do her work in conservation with tourism, and if people are not coming, right? You run Rwanda. Who here came here on Rwanda? Lots of your customers. So what was the vision behind Rwanda? What was missing in the African travel market that you thought you could fill? Why start a new airline?
The Rwandan government had the foresight to realize that in order for the country to really develop, and Rwanda being a landlocked country, heavily dependent on expensive road network, there's a non-existent railway network, the only solution would be air transport. So very early on in 2009, Rwanda Air Limited was started. Prior to that, it was Rwanda Express with one aircraft, wet leased aircraft. Wet lease means you get the aircraft with the crew, the pilots, the cabin crew, everything. So there was only one prior to 2009, and that's the one that was operating in the country. But the government realized that this would not work. The government's vision, whether it's Vision 2020, which just passed, and now Vision 2050 to transform Rwanda into a middle-income country. To do that, we would need to be connected to other African countries and to the rest of the world. So Rwanda started in that sense and has become a key pillar for the economy of the country. We now operate to 25 destinations. It was 29 prior to COVID. We had to rebuild again. Majority of these are within the African continent, but we also have the long-haul routes, including London, that they just talked about, Paris, which we just launched this year, Brussels, Dubai, Doha, and Mumbai. The good thing about, because a lot of people say, why would a tiny country like Rwanda really invest? Because airline business is an expensive business. Why would you invest in that? But the government has been very deliberate about it, and not only in terms of supporting the airline, but putting the right policies in place to help the airline thrive. Yes, the airline is supporting the economy, but the airline also has to be sustainable. Whether it's the visa on arrival for all citizens of any country in the world, which makes Rwanda so much easier to access, whether the country, the airline thrive. It's a competitive business, but with the support of the government, we are able to thrive.
Great. Now, you know, I remember I was one of those people who was skeptical when you started the airline, I'll be honest. I said, why is Rwanda starting this airline? You know, there's Ethiopian Airlines, there's, you know, South African Airways. At the time, they actually had an airline. And I thought, you know, it's a capital intensive business, you know, why are they investing so much in this thing? And then I saw, initially when I would get on Rwanda airplanes, there would be no one on it, right? There would be a few people. But then over time, it got more and more. I would see more and more people were traveling on it. And then, you know, later on, you bought some of these big A330s, and you started flying to places like Dubai and everything. I remember getting on the Dubai flight once, and your business class bus is the nicest business class bus I've ever been on anywhere in the world, right? To go jet from the terminal to the plane, and then there was Wi-Fi. Right? No African airline that I'd flown on before had Wi-Fi, right? So, I mean, what gives you the sort of, I mean, you know, what drove you to add these special touches, right? When your other African competitor airlines weren't doing these things, right? They're like, when you land in, I won't say what country, but the buses are not as nice as yours, you know? And you don't have Wi-Fi on these planes and all these things, like things that you see in Emirates and Etihad and, you know, Qatar Airways. You guys are doing them. Other African airlines are doing that. So if you're competing with African airlines, why are you bothering with these things? That adds cost.
Well, we're not competing with African airlines. We're competing with all airlines, whether it's African or international airlines. And Africans deserve good things, really.
Yeah.
I think it's very much within the theme of the country Rwanda. Whatever we do it well and provide world-class service as much as you can. Sometimes we fall short, yes, but we pick ourselves up again and move. But we are supposed to operate as a world-class airline, and that's our ambition. Not just an African airline, a world-class airline, and that's the ambition for the country. That's the ambition for the airline. But just going back to another reason why start the airline, when you think about it, the African continent with 1.4 billion people, which is 16% of the world population, but we account for about 3% of global traffic, 3%, which shows you how underserved the African continent is. We're not connected to each other. We're connected to outside of Africa, yes, but other airlines taking advantage of this, charging very, very high fares, etc. So there's a huge potential in terms of connecting the African countries to each other and to the rest of the world, and that's the gap that Rwanda has seen, and that's what we're working towards. How do we connect Rwanda to every African country, and then connect the African continent to the rest of the world? So that's our mission, and that's our ambition right now, and that's what we're working towards.
Okay. Yeah, I like your point. Right? Yeah, Africans deserve world class as well. Why not? Can you talk about the partnership that you're embarking on with Qatar Airways and the new airport that you're building in Bugesera? How is that going to affect the lives of most people here who travel across the continent?
Well, that's another well thought out partnership that the government has embarked on and has thought about. Really, for Rwanda to continue growing and continue providing world-class services, we need to partner with a strong partner. And there's no one better than Qatar Airways, really. So what we're working towards is Qatar Airways taking 49% stake in the airline, in Rwanda Air. And they've also taken 60% of the new airport that's being built in Bugesera. So we're building a world-class airport with about 8 million passengers, capacity of about 8 million passengers, but it'll be done in phases. And then we'll work together in terms of building a strong national airline and really position Rwanda as a regional hub, and which is at par and can compete with the other hubs, whether it's Nairobi or Addis or wherever. And the advantage also is Rwanda is centrally located. We're right in the heart of Africa, which makes it very easy to travel, whether it's north, south, east, west. So just the positioning of the country is fantastic from an aviation perspective. So we're excited about the partnership.
So are we going to see an airport that looks like Qatar and Dubai, that shopping, Louis Vuitton, all that kind of stuff?
I'm not sure who the tenants in the shops are going to be, but we will have a world-class airline, and a world-class airport. It'll be a green airport as well, with all the modern facilities. You've seen Hamad International Airport. I'm sure it won't be at the level of Hamad, but close enough. And we're very excited about it, and it'll allow the airline to really grow because we're very constricted right now in the current airport. It's becoming tighter and tighter as we grow. So we're excited about that and looking forward to that.
Great, I can't wait. I mean, when can we expect the airport to open?
Well, the current timing is around 2027, 28.
Okay, all right, we're looking forward to that. I mean, one of the things that when we opened African Leadership University, the first country we went to was Mauritius, and the second country we came to was Rwanda. And people ask me, they say, why did you choose those two countries? They don't have large populations. Why didn't you go to Nigeria or DRC or other Egypt that have huge populations first? Why didn't you go there first? And I tell them that for me, when you're doing something as an entrepreneur, you're trying to figure out so many things in your business, right? Your cash flow, your team, your strategy, you've got all these things you need to figure out that you don't want to be distracted by all kinds of other things that are not in your business. So for me, it's about going to places where it's not about where the market is biggest, but where the headaches are fewest, right? And that's why we chose Mauritius first and Rwanda, because, we haven't had many headaches. And then once you've built your muscle, then you can go to the more adventurous countries, which is why we're now expanding beyond. And you can hear from our speakers today just sort of what they're doing to really make this place a really great place to live and do business. One thing as well that, again, just giving you an impression of how the rest of Africans, some of the things that they've seen Rwanda doing. I remember when you built this convention center and you launched the airline. I was one of those people. I'll confess. I was like, who's going to come to Rwanda for conferences? Who's going to fly that airline? Why are they spending so much money on this building, and then they're building these hotels? And what I didn't realize was that there was a whole plan. First, then you remove the visas, like you talked about, to make it easy for people to come here. You built the airline, they built this convention center, they built the Radisson, the Marriott. And then there was this whole MICE strategy. Do you guys know what a MICE means? It's not the mice. It stands for meetings, incentives, conventions, and events. Right? Conferences and events. And then they have this thing called the Rwanda Convention Bureau, which is there to attract people to come here. Today, this place is full. You can almost never Jack Ma Africa Business Heroes Award, then Global Citizen Award. Every week, this place is packed with events. People ask me why I don't live in Rwanda full time. I say if I lived there, I would never work because I'd be always going to events, right? Because there's so many great events and it's such a lively place and restaurants are opening. And the My strategy has worked, but there was a coordinated effort between the airline and the immigration and everything. Can you all the three of you all comment about how does this country work? Because we've seen so many other countries where they say, oh, we want to do this, but then this department is not doing what the other department needs to support it, right? So can you just share from your perspective, all three of you, starting with you, Michaela, how does how are you all coordinated towards a shared vision to do something like the MICE strategy? By the way, I'm the chairman of the Rwanda Convention Bureau, and maybe that's why all your tourists are going. I'm just kidding.
Yes. Well, I think first and foremost, it's about vision. So there is a vision, there is the leadership that is very focused. We've had up to recent the Vision 2020. Now we're working on the Vision 2050. And there is a boldness, and I think it's fitting to the theme of today. When the government of Rwanda said we're building a convention center, it was a bold move. When the government said we're having an airline, it was a bold move. But even before that, when we had our first 4-star hotel, the Serena Hotel, it was the bold move because government went all over the world looking for funders, donors, partners, and no one wanted to fund a hotel for Kigali. They're like, you're just out of a genocide, you don't need a hotel. What are you talking about? You don't need that. In order to overcome that, the government actually built the hotel. Out of our minimum means that were there at the time, the hotel was built and then put to market for company to manage it, and that's how Serena came and started, being one of the first 4-star good hotel in the country. And then step by step, you move. And so fast forward to 2014, when the MICE strategy was published, Meeting Incentive Conference and Event, it's 9 years, if I count 9 years. We were not even in the top 10 in Africa in terms of hosting event. Today we are number 2 after Cape Town. And so there is this, I think, we are number 2, and everything is interconnected. And in the same fashion that you got the plot after 4 days, that's how the BK Arena was built in 6 months. I think it deserves another applause. 6 months to build an arena. And underlying that, I think there is also an important message to bring to this room. It's the power of Pan-African collaboration. Because in the case of the BK Arena, we took example from Senegal, who had just built an arena, and we worked with the same partners, and because they had done it in there already, they could do it much faster here in Kigali. The first chairman of the Rwanda Development Board was from Mauritius, because Mauritius was number 1 in doing business in Africa. So you look for examples and best practices right on the continent, and I think that's also part of the spirit of Rwanda and how things and why things work. Yeah, thanks.
Belize?
Honestly, I think Michaela said it all. I don't know if there's anything I can add, but to me, I think it's having the vision, like she said, and truly believing that you can do it. And you think about exactly what needs to be done, and you get overwhelmed. But like how Rwanda and Rwandans function is that if this makes sense, we'll do it. We'll bring in the right partners, we'll not sleep, we'll make it work. I think another example that I'll give is how we manage COVID. I always say that if this is one of my biggest regrets is the fact that we did not capture everything that was being done by the government of Rwanda during COVID. From the way we managed, keeping the numbers very, very low, to how we opened the airport. I think if there anybody who's come here to Rwanda during COVID, the way it was systematically thought through, from the time you get to the airport to the time you come out of the airport, how you're going to be quarantined, the fact that tourists were not quarantined the same amount of days that any other person, so everything is carefully thought through. I think for me that is very, very important. Things do not happen just like that. There are people, these great minds here, with the leadership of our president, that are literally not sleeping thinking, how do we make this thing work? So, just to add on what Michaela is saying, if we can do it in Rwanda with our past, I think I was talking to one of the ladies yesterday who was asking me, how, what can we do? Honestly, if we did it as Rwanda, the poor country that came out from a genocide, everyone was, coming from different cultures. We had to deal with different traumas. If we did it, any African country can do it. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's another reason why we bring our young leaders to here, because when we're training future leaders of Africa, one of the things we say is we want them to see an example of an Africa that works. And you say, if Rwanda, with all of its history, because today most countries in Africa are starting from a better place than Rwanda started 28 years ago, right? Most countries haven't had that genocide and the trauma and all that losing 1 million people in 3 months. And they have more resources, they have more, so we have no excuse but to be able to do what Rwanda's done, because we are actually starting from a better starting point. And so for me, when we bring our young leaders to be trained here, we say, look around you. When you see at night, there's power, there's electricity everywhere, no power cuts, things just work. We hope it'll inspire them to go back to their countries. Because like you say, if you can do it, there's no reason why other African countries can't do it. Yvonne, so how does this work?
Well, in addition to what they've said, I think what sets Rwanda apart is the issue of accountability. We're held accountable, right from the top to the bottom. So when we say that Rwanda works, it's not by magic. There are people spending sleepless nights making sure things work.
Can you talk about the Imohigo contract?
Yes. So every year, all of us, government who work for the government, myself included, we have to sign a performance contract with the ministry, with the ministers sign with the president, the mayors, all government employees have to sign a performance contract. So the good thing about Rwanda, yes, they give a chance to women, to young leaders, everything, but you're held accountable. You have to deliver. It's not just sitting there looking pretty and all that, but you have to deliver. If you don't deliver, you're out. So I think that's really what makes the difference, because a lot of countries have visions, but if you don't implement the vision, then what's the point? So we have to implement it, and we are asked about it on a very regular basis. We have to sit down and work together with the different institutions, different agencies, different ministries. If there's a problem, we all sit down, work on the problem, and sort it out immediately. So I haven't slept in 7 years, but what's a matter of God?
You're being held accountable.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. The president has this conference every year at the beginning of the year, right, where they bring all the key leaders and everyone signs a contract. They present their plan for the year and they report what they were supposed to have done the last year. And if you haven't delivered, it's out there for everyone to see, and that kind of really drives the performance. And then the other thing that I really like as well is I think there's at the end of the year the national dialogue,
Yes.
where people from all over the world for 1 week, right, can call in and say, I'm from this village. Last year, the mayor said they were going to build 5 schools. The schools are not here, Yeah. And then there's transparency, and people can go and, so this is the kind of system that exists, and it's really inspiring to see. So before we turn over just for a couple of minutes for questions from the audience, the one thing that I also want you to notice is that every single person on this panel is a woman, right? And Rwanda has the highest representation of women in parliament of any country in Africa or in the world. In the world, yeah. And there's 65%? 61% of people in parliament are women. And a lot of the people who run this country, whether it's Minister Paula, the ICT is a woman, the Minister of Sports is a woman, Tessie here runs Agachiro, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Women really, really are given a lot of responsibility in this country, right? And I think that's another secret to the success of Rwanda. So, embodied right here on the panel. We are almost out of time. Any couple of quick questions that people have from the audience? There's a question there. Can we get a mic, please?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Habiba Waziri.